This character checks every single box to be one of the greatest villains DreamWorks has ever created. Too bad he really isn't one. Now, of course, the biggest animation craze right now has most certainly been Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, because of the amazing animation that follows the trend of a more Into the Spider-Verse type feel with a more Western feel to it. Not to mention the amount of care being put into the action scenes and the characters that we follow along the way. Though I believe the most intriguing character out of the entire movie is most certainly Lobo. The mystique and creepiness was at an all-time high, and every time he appears, he offers a chilling experience each and every time. Lobo was universally praised as being one of the most chilling villains that have ever debuted in animation in a very long time. However, I think the assumption of Lobo being a villain in this story is completely wrong. And I have plenty of receipts of that being the case. And the first one is talking about the actual protagonist and why Lobo wants to take him out. When looking at the great Puss in Boots, even without looking at his presence in previous movies within the Shrek universe, there are a lot of traits that are quite fun and easily enjoyable on the surface. However, if we look deep into him, much like we did in the beginning of The Last Wish, he has a lot of negative traits that hovers over him, and every one of them is shown in the opening scene. In that opening scene, we start with the party-like atmosphere, where everyone treats him like a god, and he has various portraits dedicated to him. The cat eats it all up, and it shows that he is egotistical and relies on his namesake from a variety of people. When the snobbish rich guy comes in, we now recognize that Puss and these people crashed into this mansion to host this party and damaged a lot of property within the residence. That to me shows that he is not considerate of other people, and is willing to inconvenience them to get ahead, which is incredibly selfish. Finally, when he is willing to take on the men and a whole flipping giant with no regards to any safety, it's shown that he is incredibly overconfident. Put all these negative traits together and it adds to Lobo's biggest issue with Puss in Boots, his lack of respect for death, which is what we discovered to be who Lobo actually is. He outright hates Puss because he did not cherish the lives he lost during his pursuit in increasing his legacy, which leads into the next point I want to bring up. So, death has had many depictions within a variety of mythology, and of course in the media itself. A quick blurb on Wikipedia states, death is frequently imagined as a personified force. In some mythologies, a character known as the Grim Reaper causes the victim's death by coming to collect that person's soul. That is the job of Lobo in this story. He's the last person you see before moving on to the afterlife. He clearly wields some magical present that gives the victims hints that he is around. Death can only be seen by the person who he targets, and will use certain tactics to instill anxiety like hallucinations and illusions to try and isolate the victim, using various symbolic gestures to send the message that he is coming for you. It's always interesting for how majority of death incarnations will only fully interact with their target when they are on their own with no one to aid them. While this version of death is a lot more ambitious in taking Puss in particular, he's still technically doing his job, and it will be something he achieves at some point because death waits for no one. He embraces that job in a very primal state, which is why he works so well as a character alone. He is easily the most powerful being within the Shrek universe, and he knows it. He is kind of similar to Puss in a way when it comes to his overconfidence in his ability. But I mean, how can it not with the ability to snatch my soul for the fun of it? Though I can understand that wanting to end Puss's life on his own terms does give off villain-like attributes, I don't think that it takes away from the truth that Lobo is simply doing his job as the Grim Reaper. I mean, if he didn't take this route, I'm sure Puss would get himself killed in the near future anyways if he didn't go through this journey for the shooting star. So, to me, Lobo doesn't represent the villain of this story. I would say that he is more... Yeah, I don't think there's any way to put it. He's not a villain nor an anti-hero. I can't even see that he is a rival of Puss, even though their chemistry together is easily the best part of this movie. He was certainly the spark to help Puss realize the importance in appreciating your own life and what is actually worth living for. While Puss had that fear throughout the entirety of the movie, even when Lobo isn't present at the time, it's a very important trait to have, because it prevents yourself from risking your life haphazardly. Puss now understands that he is to be more willing to protect and care for his own life in order to truly be legendary, because he has people that want him to be in their life. So learning to appreciate that is something I believe Puss should be thankful for, and accepting that death will come for him one day further pushes that narrative. So, in a way, Lobo isn't really a villain. He is a lesson.